the 20th of December 2025, Blackwood Heights, Oregon. It's the kind of night where the rain doesn't just fall, it colonizes. It's been coming down for 6 days straight, soaking into the foundation of the old Blackwood lofts until the very concrete feels like it's sweating. Down in the guts of the building, a low-level tech named Tyler is squeezed between a sewer pipe and a support beam. He's not here for a ghost story. He's here because the smart hub on the 4th floor is throwing a code that shouldn't exist. He's looking for a short, a frayed wire, a nest of rats chewing through fiber optics. Tyler wipes a smear of grease off his screen. He's confused. There is no Wi-Fi in the crawl space. There are no routers behind the brick. But the notification pops up again and again. Elena V is requesting access. Then the lights in the crawl space don't just flicker, they hum. A deep, sub-bass vibration that rattles the fillings in Tyler's teeth. He pushes aside a loose pile of insulation and hits something hard, something cold. He clears the dust, expecting a pipe. What he finds is a wall of brick that doesn't match the rest of the basement. The mortar is too clean for the 1,920 seconds, but too weathered for the 2000s. And from behind that wall comes a sound that stops his heart. That's a sound from a different era, a sound that died decades ago. Tyler pulls a crowbar from his belt. He's not thinking about building codes anymore. He's thinking about the fact that the device ID, Elena V, is the name of the girl who walked out of this building in 1994 and never looked back. He swings, the brick gives way, and as the dust settles, his headlamp catches the glint of a spinning cooling fan. A server rack from the mid-90s, still powered, still waiting. Before we peel back the layers of what was found behind that wall, I want to check in with the jury. You guys are the heart of this channel. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments. What time is it there and what's the weather like? I'm reading every single one of your responses. I want to know who is in this room with us as we reopen this file. If you're new to Plain Verdict, you've stepped in at the right time. We don't just tell stories here. We hunt for the truth that others have buried. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. You're going to want to be here for the moment the final piece of evidence drops. To understand why a server in a basement is a miracle or a haunting, you have to understand the girl it was named after. You have to understand the Pacific Northwest in the early 90s. In 1994, Oregon wasn't the tech hub it is today. It was a place of timber, flannel, and grimy basement shows. But at Blackwood University, Elena Vance was living in the future. She was 22, a senior in the computer science department, and by all accounts, she was a wizard. This wasn't a girl who played video games. This was a girl who saw the world as a series of logic gates. Her roommates described her as intense, not the scary kind of intense, but the kind of person who looked through you rather than at you. She was obsessed with the idea of digital footprints before the term even existed. She used to tell her professors that the internet wouldn't be a library, it would be a cage. The 12th of November, 1994. The morning was typical for Blackwood Heights. Overcast, a light drizzle that feels like it's soaking into your bones. Elena woke up at 7 a.m. She made a pot of coffee. She told her roommate, Marcus Reed, that she was headed to the lab to finish her senior project, something she called the Icarus Protocol. She grabbed her black laptop bag, her keys, and a bottle of water. She walked out the door of apartment 4B. She was seen one last time at 8:15 a.m. at a local gas station. The footage is the holy grail of Northwest cold cases. You've probably seen it. It's grainy. 5 frames per second. Black and white. Elena is standing at the counter. She's looking over her shoulder every 3 seconds. She looks like a rabbit that's caught the scent of a wolf. She pays for a pack of gum. She turns to the camera. She mouths 3 words. For 30 years, the local PD and every armchair detective on Reddit argued over those words. Most thought it was, "He's in here." Others thought it was, "I'm so sorry." But they were wrong. Because the people looking at the tape in the 90s didn't have the tools we have in 2025. She wasn't talking to the clerk. She wasn't talking to a kidnapper. She was talking to the future. She said, "Check the box." 2 hours later, her car was found parked in its assigned spot back at the apartment. The engine was cold. The keys were gone. Elena Vance had effectively evaporated. The police did a sweep. They knocked on doors. They looked in the woods. They did the standard missing co-ed routine, but they never looked in the basement. They never noticed the extra 5 inches of brickwork in the mechanical room. And they certainly never noticed that the building's power bill was 30% higher than it should have been. For 3 decades, the plain verdict was that Elena had been snatched by a drifter, a random act of violence in a rainy town. But as Tyler the tech stood in that crawl space in 2025, staring at a server that had been running on stolen power since the Clinton administration, he realized the story wasn't about a girl who was taken. It was about a girl who had gone to ground, and she had brought the future down into the dirt with her. To the people of Blackwood Heights, Elena Vance was a tragedy. To her professors, she was a liability. But to the history of technology, she was something else entirely. She was a pioneer who saw the storm coming before the first drop of rain even hit the ground. You have to remember what the world looked like in the fall of '94. The internet was a playground for academics and hobbyists. Most people were still waiting 3 minutes for a single image to load on a screen. But Elena wasn't interested in the World Wide Web. She was interested in predictive architecture. She was obsessed with the idea that if you fed a computer enough data about a person, where they shopped, who they called, what time they turned off their lights, the computer could tell you what that person was going to do before they even thought of it. She called it the Icarus Protocol. Her roommate, Marcus Reed, was a sociology major. He was a loud guy, the kind of guy who wore oversized flannel and spent his weekends at dive bars. In his initial statement to the police, he sounded baffled by her. She didn't have friends, Marcus told the detectives back then. She had nodes. She'd sit at that desk for 20 hours, her face glowing green from the monitor, typing code that looked like another language. I asked her once why she didn't just go out and live. She looked at me, man. It was the coldest look I've ever seen, and she said, "Marcus, I'm the only person in this town who actually knows what living is. The rest of you are just following an algorithm you don't even know exists." But here's where the story takes a turn into the shadows. Elena wasn't just working on a school project. She was being funded. In the mid-90s, if you were a genius in a basement, the government or a big tech shadow firm eventually found you. Elena had been receiving stipends from a shell company called Prometheus Systems. Their headquarters? A nondescript glass building in the Silicon Forest outside of Portland. Their CEO? A man named Dr. Eris Thorne. Thorne was the darling of the early tech boom. He was the kind of guy who did TED Talks before they were called TED Talks. He spoke about the global brain. But behind closed doors, he was building something much darker. He wanted Elena's code to help map human behavior for the sake of national security. The goal isn't just to watch them, Elena. The goal is to be one step ahead of them. If we know where they are going, we can build the road before they arrive. Elena realized too late that she wasn't building a tool for progress. She was building a digital panopticon. She was building the very cage she had warned her professors about. A week before she vanished, she tried to pull the plug. She tried to delete the source code from the university mainframe. But Thorne had her cornered. He threatened her with industrial espionage charges. He told her she'd never work in tech again. He told her she'd spend her life in a federal prison. Which brings us back to that rainy morning at the gas station. When she mouthed those words, "check the box," she wasn't talking to the police. She knew the police wouldn't understand a line of code if it bit them. She was talking to the one person she thought she could trust. She was talking to Marcus Reed, but Marcus didn't check the box. He didn't find the hidden server. He didn't tell the police about the Prometheus Systems payments. Instead, Marcus Reed moved out of the apartment 3 days later and disappeared into the heart of the country, leaving Elena's ghost behind. I want to pause right here. We're deep in the woods now. I want to ask you a question that might feel a little uncomfortable. Do you think Marcus Reed was a victim of fear, or was he an accomplice? If you were in his shoes, a 20-year-old kid in 1994, terrified of a billionaire tech mogul, what would you have done? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'm seeing some incredible theories starting to form. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, give that like button a tap. It helps the algorithm know that this is a case that needs to be seen. It helps us keep the lights on here at Plain Verdict. Now, let's talk about the investigation. And I use that word very loosely. When the Blackwood Heights PD took the case, the lead detective was a man named Silas Vance. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. His name was Vance. Her name was Vance. In a town of 6,000 people, the police department claimed this was a pure coincidence. They said they were distant cousins, maybe, but that there was no conflict of interest. Silas Vance was a company man. He was the kind of cop who liked his coffee black and his cases simple. A missing girl? She probably ran off with a boyfriend, he told the local paper. She was stressed. These college kids, they crack under the pressure. Detective Vance did a cursory search of her apartment. He spent 40 minutes in 4B. He didn't notice the hammer marks on the desk. He didn't notice that the ventilation duct in the kitchen was slightly misaligned. He walked right past the basement door and told the landlord, "Don't worry about the cellar. We checked the perimeter." But Silas Vance was lying. Because we've uncovered something the original files never mentioned. Silas Vance wasn't just a cop. He was on the payroll. While Elena's mother was crying on the local news, begging for her daughter to come home, the man in charge of finding her was cashing checks from the man who wanted her silenced. This wasn't an investigation. It was a funeral for the truth. But Thorne and Vance made one massive mistake. They thought Elena was a problem to be solved. They didn't realize she was a system. And systems don't just disappear. They wait for a reboot. In 2025, that reboot finally happened. And the first thing that came back online was Elena's voice. Let's look at what the 1994 file actually says. Or more importantly, what it doesn't say. In the United States, the first 48 hours are everything. If you don't find a lead in 2 days, the chances of finding a missing person drop by 60%. Silas Vance waited 72 hours before even entering her apartment. He claimed he didn't want to violate her civil liberties. He was letting the trail go cold on purpose. When they finally searched the unit, they found the smashed hardware. Now, any normal detective would see a destroyed computer and think, struggle or destruction of evidence. Silas Vance wrote it off as mental instability. He told the press Elena had a breakdown and destroyed her own work before fleeing. But look at the physics of the smash. The impact came from a 45-degree angle. That's not the swing of a panicked girl. That's the swing of someone standing over a desk. Someone taller. Someone with a longer reach. Someone like Silas Vance. Or Eris Thorne. And then there's the car. The car was found in the lot of the apartment building. The keys were gone, but the gas tank was full. If Elena was running away, why would she leave her only means of transportation? Why would she leave her purse on the passenger seat with her ID and $60 in cash still inside? In 1994, $60 was a lot of money. It was enough to get a bus ticket to Seattle. It was enough for a week of groceries. You don't leave that behind if you're starting over. You only leave it behind if you never made it to the car. The plain verdict of 1994 was a lie built on a foundation of grease and corruption. The town of Blackwood Heights wanted to believe their university was safe. The police wanted their checks to clear, and Eris Thorne wanted his code. They all got what they wanted. For 31 years, the world moved on. Thorne became a legend. Vance retired with a full pension, and the Blackwood lofts were converted into luxury apartments for a new generation of tech workers who had no idea that a ghost was living in their walls. But Elena Vance was a coder. And in the world of code, nothing is ever truly deleted. It's just marked as free space until something new comes along to override it. In 2025, the new world arrived. But instead of overriding Elena, it woke her up. When the construction crew hit that wall, they thought they'd found an old utility closet. But once the dust settled and the plain verdict technical team arrived with ground-penetrating radar, the reality was much stranger. We weren't just looking at a room. We were looking at a Faraday cage. For the non-techies in the room, a Faraday cage is a shield, usually a mesh of conductive material that blocks all electromagnetic signals. No radio waves, no cellular signals, no Wi-Fi. In 1994, building something like this in a residential basement wasn't just extra, it was an act of extreme digital survival. Elena Vance didn't just want to hide her body. She wanted to hide her data from the very air itself. The air in this room hasn't moved in 31 years. It smells of ozone, old paper, and that specific metallic tang of scorched electronics. But it was what was under the server that changed the case. Our forensic architect noticed that the concrete floor beneath the rack wasn't original to the 922nd's foundation. It was a patch job. It was poured in a hurry. Using a 2025 grade GPR unit, we scanned the floor. 6 feet down, the radar hit a rectangular mass, lead-lined, about the size of a footlocker. When we brought in the jackhammers, the mood in that basement shifted. Everyone stopped talking. The only sound was the iron hitting the stone. When the box was finally pulled to the surface, it wasn't empty, and it wasn't a body. It was a survival kit for the truth. Inside, wrapped in anti-static plastic, was Elena's black laptop bag, the one she was carrying at the gas station. Next to it was a stack of yellow legal pads covered in dense, handwritten code, the Icarus Protocol in its purest form. And at the very bottom, sitting in a padded case, was a single microcassette tape. We are about to play the contents of that tape. But before we do, I need to know your verdict so far. Do you think Elena Vance was hiding from Dr. Thorne? Or was she hiding something for him? The line between victim and accomplice is getting very thin. Drop a V in the comments if you think she was a victim, or an A if you think she was an accomplice. And if you're finding this investigation as gripping as we did, take a second to hit that notification bell. We've got more plain verdict files opening soon, and you don't want to be the last to know when the truth drops. It's August 1997, I think. It's hard to keep track of the cycles down here. Marcus hasn't come for 6 days. The coal chute is locked. If you're hearing this, it means the handshake protocol failed. It means Thorne found the back door. The room went silent as that voice filled the basement. Elena didn't vanish in 1994. She didn't run away. She had been living in that 4-by-8-foot room for 3 years. Think about that for a second. 3 years in the dark. 3 years fueled by granola bars and bottled water passed through a coal chute by Marcus Reed. She wasn't a missing person, she was a living processor. The tape continues. Elena explains that the 1992nd's hardware wasn't fast enough to run the Icarus Protocol. The AI needed a human to bridge the logic gaps to manually verify the predictive paths. Thorne had convinced her that if she just finished the work, he'd let her go. He'd give her a new identity. He'd protect her. But in 1997, Elena realized the new identity Thorne was planning was a shallow grave. This is where the plain verdict gets its name. We sent the bag to a specialized lab in Seattle. Using VMD technology, which can pull prints off fabric even after decades, they found 3 distinct sets of DNA and oils. One set was Elena's, no surprise there. The second set belonged to Marcus Reed. He was her lifeline. He was the one who kept the secret. But the third set didn't belong to Dr. Thorne. They belonged to Detective Silas Vance, the man who was supposedly searching for her, the man who told her mother she was a runaway. He hadn't just been on the payroll. He had been the one moving the bricks. He was the one who helped Thorne turn that basement into a tomb. The tape ends with the sound of the metal door being forced open. Elena's last words on that recording aren't a plea for mercy. They are a line of code. Armed with the tape and the fingerprints, the team didn't go to the police. In a town like Blackwood Heights, you don't take the truth to the people who buried it. Instead, we went to Montana. We found Marcus Reed. He's 53 now, but he looks 80. When we showed him the photo of the smart fridge notification, Elena V is requesting access, he didn't even ask who we were. He just dropped his axe and sat down in the dirt. She told me it would take 30 years, he whispered. She said the pipes of the world weren't big enough yet. She told me to wait for the light. Marcus confessed everything. Thorne hadn't just threatened Elena, he'd threatened Marcus's entire family. He turned a college kid into a jailer. Every night for 3 years, Marcus lived a double-life sociology student by day, accomplice to a digital kidnapping by night. But what about the man at the top? Dr. Icarus Thorne. Thorne is currently living in a $20 million estate in Palo Alto. When our producers reached out for comment, his legal team sent a 40-page document threatening to sue us into the Stone Age. They claimed the Icarus logs were a hoax. They claimed the basement room was a historical renovation gone wrong. But they didn't know about the time logic bomb. If you want to know what the price of a human life looks like in the tech world, look at Palo Alto. Here, the driveways are heated, the air smells like eucalyptus, and the secrets are buried under layers of non-disclosure agreements and high-priced legal counsel. This is where Dr. Icarus Thorne retired. He didn't spend 30 years in a basement. He spent 30 years on the boards of Fortune 500 companies. He spent 30 years being called a visionary. When our team arrived at Thorne's estate, we didn't bring cameras, not at first. We brought a tablet, and on that tablet, we had the restored audio from the microcassette tape. We didn't get past the gate, but we didn't need to. We played the audio over the intercom. The silence that followed on the other end of that intercom was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It wasn't the silence of a man who was innocent. It was the silence of a man who realized that the delete key doesn't work on the truth. 10 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled out of the driveway. Thorne wasn't there to talk. He was fleeing. But in 2025, where do you go? Every highway has a camera. Every toll booth has a sensor. The very system he hired Elena to build the predictive surveillance was now the very thing that made his escape impossible. He was detained at San Francisco International. Not for murder, not yet. He was detained for questioning regarding industrial espionage and unlawful confinement based on the evidence found in the lead box. But while Thorne was being handcuffed in a VIP lounge, we were heading back to Oregon, because there was one more man who needed to face the team. Silas Vance, the detective, the cousin, the man who sold his badge for $15,000 and a quiet retirement. He didn't have a legal team. He didn't have a glass house. He had a twin bed and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. When we walked into his room, he was staring at a television that wasn't even turned on. We showed him the VMD fingerprint report, the glowing prints on the black canvas bag. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. She was so quiet, he whispered. His voice sounded like dry leaves on pavement. I thought she was just a ghost already. Thorne said she wasn't real anymore. He said she was part of the machine. I just moved the bricks, son. I just moved the bricks. Vance admitted that on that night in 1997, he didn't kill her. He couldn't do it. Instead, he drove her to the Greyhound station in Portland. He gave her $50 and told her to become someone else. Thorne thought she was dead. Silas Vance thought she was gone. But Elena Vance was a coder. She knew that to truly disappear, you don't just leave town, you leave the timeline. So, what is the plain verdict? We never found a body. We never found a death certificate. And as of this recording, there is no Elena Vance registered in any state or federal database. But 3 weeks ago, a bank account in a small town in Vermont, an account that had been dormant since 1999, was suddenly accessed. The amount withdrawn, exactly $60. The same amount Elena had left in her car in 1994. Elena Vance didn't just survive. She waited. She knew that the Icarus Protocol, the surveillance monster she helped create, would eventually become so big, so all-encompassing, that the only way to beat it was to use it against itself. She used the Miller's smart fridge as a ping, a flare sent up from the digital deep. She didn't want a rescue. She wanted a reckoning. As we speak, Dr. Eris Thorne is awaiting trial. Silas Vance passed away in his sleep 4 days after our interview, the weight of 30 years finally proving too heavy to carry. And the Blackwood lofts? They've been condemned. Not because of the structure, but because of the data. The logic bomb Elena left in the wiring has made the building digitally radioactive. No Wi-Fi works there, no phones. It is a dead zone in a connected world. A permanent monument to a girl who refused to be deleted. This brings us to the end of the file. But for Elena Vance, I have a feeling the story is just beginning. I want to hear from you one last time. If Elena is out there watching this and given her track record, she probably is. What would you say to her? Is she a hero for exposing Thorne, or is she a ghost we should be afraid of? Leave your final thoughts below. And before you go, if this story made you look at your own smart devices a little differently tonight, do me a favor. Share this video. True crime isn't just about the past. It's about the things hiding in our present. I'm plain verdict. The case is closed. But the truth is still uploading.